Welcome back to Sleepy Science History. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you've tucked yourself under a blanket, or maybe you're lying awake, staring at the ceiling, hoping your mind will drift into something softer, something slower. Tonight, let's wander into a question that feels both playful and profound. What if everything around us, from the stars above to the chair beneath you, is part of a cosmic simulation? Strange, isn't it? The thought itself is like standing in front of a mirror that reflects another mirror, an endless corridor of reflections that stretch into the unknown. How do we know what's real? And if our world is not quite what it seems, would you even want to know? I find myself smiling as I ask you this, because these questions have been whispered not just in science fiction but in scientific debates, too. Philosophers, physicists, and even computer scientists sometimes pause, scratch their heads, and wonder, are we players in a game far larger than we can imagine? Let's ease into it slowly, the way you sip tea and let it warm your hands before it warms your chest. Picture yourself walking into an old library. The shelves stretch so high you can barely see the top. The air smells of wood and paper. Every book holds a universe. Some are written in languages you'll never learn. Others have been read so many times the words are fading. You reach out and take one book from the shelf. You open it and inside, there is a story of a world. Our world, perhaps, where the rivers run, the stars shine, and people laugh and fall in love. Now imagine this. What if your own life is inside such a book, carefully written line by line, but you can't see the ink? What if your days are just pages in a story being read by something far beyond your understanding? Does that sound unsettling or strangely comforting? That's the heart of the simulation idea. That reality, everything we touch, taste, and feel might be generated, programmed, like a video game that is so detailed, so perfectly designed, that the characters living in it never suspect they are made of code. You've played a game before, haven't you? Maybe something simple where the world is pixelated and small. Or maybe something so immersive that the characters feel almost alive. Now, think about how fast technology grows. Decades ago, people played games where the screen blinked with two white paddles and a bouncing dot. Today, you can walk through digital cities that shimmer with rain, hear footsteps echo in alleys, watch characters cry with almost human emotion. So, what happens when a game becomes so real that even the characters inside it don't know they're characters? What happens when the grass bends in the wind, when raindrops cling to windows, when minds inside the game begin to ask, what am I made of? I catch myself chuckling softly here, because it sounds like a bedtime riddle a mischievous philosopher might whisper. But scientists do consider it. One of them, Nick Bostrom, even put it into a famous argument. He said, in simple terms, that either civilizations never reach the stage of building such complex simulations, or if they do, they might build billions of them. And if billions of simulated worlds exist, then the odds suggest we could very well be inside one. It's a dizzying thought. Like standing at the edge of the ocean and realizing you're looking at only the first ripple of waves that never end. But maybe you're wondering, how would we ever know? Wouldn't we notice a glitch? Wouldn't the code slip? Think about a video game again. When your computer lags, when the image freezes, when things don't add up, you might shrug and say, oh, that's a bug. Some physicists ask whether the universe has bugs, too. Odd rules, strange coincidences, numbers that seem too neat. Why does physics work the way it does? Why does everything, from the tiniest particle to the largest galaxy, follow laws so exact you can write them on paper? If reality were truly raw and infinite, wouldn't it be messy, chaotic, without structure? Instead, it feels as though someone or something set the rules at the start like parameters in a simulation. Now, I'm not saying the universe pops error messages the way your computer does. But have you ever noticed those moments that feel like glitches in your own life? Déjà vu, for example, that sudden, eerie sense you've lived this exact moment before. Is it simply your brain, or a hiccup in the code? Of course, science doesn't claim déjà vu is proof of a simulation. But doesn't your mind wander there anyway? Here's another way to imagine it. Look at your hands. The skin, the lines, the way your fingers move. They feel solid, but zoom down far enough. Past cells, past molecules, past atoms, and suddenly there's almost nothing there. Empty space with particles flickering in and out like ghosts. It's as though the universe is built on hidden scaffolding. Some even compare it to pixels on a screen. You zoom in and the picture breaks into dots. Could our universe have its own pixels? A smallest possible unit of space, invisible to us, but woven into everything? So, does that sound like nature or like code? I'll pause here to breathe with you, because it's easy to let these thoughts spiral into unease. But let's not rush. These ideas are not here to frighten us. They are here to remind us that reality, whatever it is stranger and more wondrous than we often allow ourselves to feel. If this is a simulation, it is a breathtaking one. Think about sunsets that paint the sky with impossible colors. Think about laughter that ripples between friends. Think about music that makes you cry though no one told you why. Wouldn't it mean the programmer, if there is one, cared enough to give us beauty? And what about you? Right now, sitting there, listening to these words. If you are simulated, does that make your thoughts any less real? When you feel love, is it diminished by being lines of code? When you dream, is the dream any less yours because it is written in algorithms? Maybe, in the end, the difference doesn't matter. Because what we call real is simply what we experience. If the warmth of tea feels warm, if the voice of a friend feels comforting, then those experiences are real for you, regardless of whether the universe runs on atoms or equations. Sometimes, I like to picture an old cosmic computer humming quietly in a room we'll never see. Not blinking with harsh lights, not cold, but glowing softly, patiently running the story of our universe. Maybe the one at the controls is not a person at all, but something more mysterious, something that doesn't think in human terms. Or maybe, here's a playful thought, you are the one dreaming yourself into existence. You, the listener, are both the character and the author, both the simulated and the simulator. Isn't that curious? As we reach the quiet close of this first chapter, let's hold the question gently rather than rush to answer it. Are we living in a cosmic simulation? We may never know, but perhaps the value lies not in proving it true or false, but in noticing how the question opens us. It makes us pause, look around, and see the ordinary with new wonder. The way a cup of water sparkles in sunlight, the way silence feels heavy, then light, the way even in doubt there is beauty. So, tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let the question float in your mind like a lantern on a calm lake. No hurry, no need to solve it. Just let it glow and carry you gently into dreams. What if the universe is speaking in a language we have not yet learned to read? What if every ripple of light, every quirk of gravity, is a whisper of something hidden, something behind the curtain? Have you ever wondered why numbers sit so neatly beneath everything? The planets move with equations. The atoms dance in patterns. Even chaos itself has rules. Why should the world be so perfectly measured? Could it be because we are inside a system designed to be solvable, a puzzle built with elegant mathematics as its scaffolding? Imagine sitting at a piano. You press one key, and a note fills the air. Then another and another. Soon, you realize the piano has been tuned just so, each string stretched to sing in harmony. The laws of physics are like that piano. They could have been discordant, harsh, or unstable, yet they are tuned with remarkable precision. The smallest change in a constant, the tiniest shift in a force, and stars would never form. Planets would not spin. Life would never take a breath. Why should reality be so finely balanced? Why is the universe tuned for being, instead of silence? Some scientists call it the fine-tuning problem. Others call it evidence of design. And still others whisper, perhaps it is the mark of a simulation, the way a programmer sets the rules to allow the story to unfold. Doesn't it feel strange that the universe seems eager to host us? Take gravity, a quiet, invisible force. It pulls oceans into tides, holds the moon in its arc, keeps your feet pressed against the ground. Yet, compared to the other forces of nature, gravity is absurdly weak. A tiny magnet on your fridge can lift a paperclip against the entire pull of Earth. Why should gravity be so faint? If it were stronger, stars would collapse too quickly. If weaker, planets would scatter like dust. Somehow, it rests at just the right strength. Balanced, poised. a delicate setting on a cosmic dial. And doesn't that sound like something chosen, rather than random? Or consider light. Why does it travel at the speed it does, neither faster nor slower? Why is there a maximum speed at all? The laws of relativity hold us steady, as though the universe enforces a cosmic speed limit. But who or what sets that law? Why should existence care how fast information flows? Sometimes, it feels as though reality is stitched together with rules as precise as computer code. And when we bump against these rules, when we try to bend them, the universe says, no further. Is that the mark of nature or of programming? Let's step sideways for a moment into your own daily life. Think about video games you may have played. The worlds inside them are beautiful, but they are not infinite. They are designed to seem infinite. Walk too far and you might find yourself circling back. Climb too high, and the mountains end in invisible walls. Our universe, too, may not be endless. Cosmologists debate whether space wraps back on itself, like the surface of a sphere, or whether it is finite but unbounded. The stars stretch beyond sight, yet still, there may be edges hidden from us. And just like in a game, maybe those boundaries are not meant to be crossed. Do you ever feel that reality has guardrails? Here's a curious thought. When scientists study the universe, they often find limits. The smallest length, the shortest time, the highest possible energy. As though the cosmos is built on minimums and maximums like settings on a machine. For instance, there is a tiniest possible slice of space known as the Planck length. Smaller than that, and space itself begins to blur. Time, too, has a shortest tick, the Planck time. You cannot divide it further. Physics itself says, this is the smallest unit, the pixel of reality. When you hear that, doesn't it sound less like endless nature and more like a resolution setting? Like the grain of the screen you're staring at right now? And then, there's randomness. Quantum mechanics tells us the world at its core is unpredictable. Particles flicker in and out of being, roll dice we cannot see, make choices without cause. Yet somehow, those random jitters add up to a world that feels solid, lawful, reliable. Could randomness be a trick? A way to keep the code efficient, to sprinkle unpredictability where detail is unnecessary. After all, in a video game, you don't simulate every blade of grass. You generate them with chance so the field feels real without wasting resources. Is the universe, too, a clever illusion of probability? I think about this when I sit quietly at night. The street outside is still, the hum of electricity in the walls is steady, and I wonder, how much of what I see is genuine, and how much is shadow play? Look at the night sky. Stars shimmer like jewels pinned on velvet. Yet much of that light has traveled for millions of years. Some of those stars may no longer even exist. What you see is not the present, but a recording, a playback of the past. A projection of light across cosmic time. Isn't it uncanny that the very fabric of our experience is built on illusions of distance and delay? We trust our senses, yet they offer only fragments, delayed broadcasts from across space. You think you see the universe. In truth, you see echoes. Doesn't that feel a little like watching pixels on a screen, always one step removed from the source? Another question. If this is a simulation, why was it made? For entertainment? For study? For curiosity? And if so, who are we to the makers? Characters in their experiment? Performers on their stage? It feels unsettling to imagine. But then again, don't we do the same? When we create digital worlds, we populate them with characters. They live, they move, they decide, at least from their perspective. Do we not, in some way, play the role of gods to them? And if they could think, if they could feel, would they not ask, what is my purpose? Who made me? Are we not, perhaps, simply echoing that same question upward? Let's not get too heavy. Pause with me here. Breathe. Feel the air moving in and out of your chest. You are alive, whether by chance, by nature, or by code. That is the miracle, isn't it? That there is experience at all. Sometimes, I think the simulation idea is not about proving or disproving. It is about perspective. It nudges us to see life as precious, fragile, designed or not. It asks us to imagine ourselves as part of something larger, something layered. Would you live differently if you knew you were simulated? Or would you laugh and love and dream just the same? Here is a playful metaphor. Imagine you are inside a painting. You walk among the brushstrokes, touch the canvas trees, sit beside rivers of paint. You live, you feel, you build a life. Then one day you suspect the trees are pigment, the rivers are color. Does that make your life less meaningful? Or does it make the painting itself more astonishing? So too with the universe. Whether it is woven of atoms or algorithms, it still cradles you, still offers mornings of golden light, still offers evenings of quiet reflection. Perhaps the question is not what reality is made of, but what you choose to do within it. Before we drift away from this chapter, let's let the mystery rest lightly on our shoulders. The fine-tuned constants, the whispers of code, the smallest pixels of space. They are clues, perhaps, or they are simply the fabric of nature. Either way, they invite us to wonder. And wonder is the real gift, isn't it? That in the quiet of your mind, you can ask questions with no final answers. That you can gaze into the dark and feel both small and infinite at once. So tonight, let that question linger. Are we living inside a cosmic design? Or is design simply the shape of the cosmos itself? Don't solve it. Just breathe it in the way you breathe in the night air, cool, mysterious, alive. What if memory itself is a kind of code? When you close your eyes and recall the face of someone you love, the sound of a familiar laugh, or the way the wind felt on a childhood afternoon, are you replaying reality or accessing data stored inside your mind's machine? And if the universe is a simulation, could our memories be nothing more than carefully written lines? Instructions that tell us what to recall, when to recall it, and even what to forget. Think about the way a computer game saves progress. Each time you return, the world remembers where you left off. Your character still has the same items, the same friends, the same scars. Isn't that strangely similar to how you wake each morning, carrying the history of yourself? But what if some of those memories are stitched together, not because they really happened, but because the program wanted them to feel real? Could déjà vu be nothing more than a memory misfiled, a replay of code run twice? Could false memories, which science tells us are astonishingly common, be the small errors of a cosmic save file? Do you ever pause and wonder how much of your past is exactly as you recall it? Neuroscience tells us memory is not a perfect recording. Each recollection is more like a painting redrawn. Every time you remember, your mind recreates the scene, brushstroke by brushstroke, and in the process, details shift. A shirt changes color. A word sounds different. A face grows softer or sharper. Memory, in this sense, is an act of imagination. But what if imagination and memory are not so different after all? What if they are both tools of the same simulation, ways of stitching continuity into the story so that you always feel grounded? After all, no program could afford to write every detail of every second of every life. It would have to be selective, efficient. Maybe the universe only fills in the pieces you focus on, and the rest is generated when you look. Like a video game world that renders the forest only when you walk into it. This brings us to perception itself. Have you ever noticed how the world seems to sharpen when you pay attention? You hear details you hadn't noticed before. The faint hum of a refrigerator, the distant cry of a bird, the subtle flicker of shadows on the wall. It is as though your awareness turns on the lights. And maybe it does. In quantum physics, there is a principle called the observer effect. When we measure particles, they behave differently than when unobserved. At tiny scales, reality seems to hesitate until it is looked at, as though it waits for attention before choosing a form. Is that physics or is that programming? Could it be that the simulation conserves its energy, rendering details only when someone observes them? Think of it like a stage play. The spotlight follows the actors, and everything outside the circle of light fades into shadow. The scenery need not be painted in detail if the audience cannot see it. Our perception might be the spotlight and reality the stage. But then, who is the audience? That question lingers like incense smoke, curling upward. Are we only players, or are we also being watched? If this is a simulation, is someone out there peering into our world, curious about how we laugh, how we cry, how we stumble and rise again? Would you behave differently if you knew your every action was observed? Or would you simply keep being yourself because after all, you are real to you? Let's wander back to memory for a moment, because it is such a rich thread. Scientists studying the brain sometimes liken it to a computer, not because it is mechanical, but because of how it processes, stores, and retrieves information. Neurons fire in patterns, pathways strengthen with repetition, old memories fade as circuits weaken. But what fascinates me most is that our brains do not just store facts. They store feelings. A scent of cinnamon can carry you instantly to a holiday years ago. A certain song can flood you with emotions you thought were gone. Isn't that extraordinary? That the mind can carry not just data, but atmosphere, warmth, sorrow, joy. And if we are in a simulation, isn't it beautiful that the program included this richness? That it allowed us to feel nostalgia, to experience longing, to savor moments twice. Once in living, once in remembering? Doesn't that suggest care, artistry, maybe even love in the design? Now think of dreams. When you dream, the mind spins entire worlds. Cities, oceans, forests, conversations. Sometimes they feel more vivid than waking life. You might wake with your heart racing, breath quickened, because the dream was so real. What if dreams are not random firing of neurons, but small test simulations within the larger one? Sandboxes where the program experiments, runs possibilities, explores scenarios? Could your dreams be echoes of other realities, brief windows into other versions of you? And when you wake, could the faint déjà vu you feel be the residue of those dream worlds brushing against this one? It is curious, isn't it, how fragile and fluid reality feels when you start to question it. You trust your senses, but they can be fooled. Optical illusions trick your eyes. Magic tricks deceive your focus. Even your own thoughts sometimes surprise you. So if perception can be fooled so easily, what makes you so sure that what you call real is not just the most convincing trick of all? This is not meant to unsettle you. Think of it instead as a gentle invitation to see reality as both true and mysterious, to hold it lightly, the way you hold a bubble in your palm, shimmering, knowing it might burst but marveling at its colors while it lasts. Philosophers have asked these questions for centuries. Descartes wondered how he could know he existed at all. His answer was the famous, "I think, therefore I am." Even if everything else was illusion, the very act of thinking proved he was. But what if thinking itself is just part of the program? Would that change its value? When you laugh, does it matter whether laughter is a chemical reaction in neurons or a line of simulated code? The experience feels the same. The joy is the same. Perhaps reality is less about what it is and more about what it feels like. There's a metaphor I love. Imagine life as a novel. The characters in the story are written on the page, bound by the author's words. Yet, when you read the book, don't the characters feel alive? They love, they grieve, they choose. And in a way, they are real within their world. If we are characters in a cosmic novel, then our lives are just as real, even if they are written in code rather than ink. Your choices matter within your story, because they shape the narrative you live. So perhaps the question is not whether the simulation exists, but how you choose to walk through it. Think again of memory, and ask yourself this. When you recall your happiest moment, does it matter if it was programmed? Or is it enough that you felt joy? When you think of your darkest hour, does it matter if it was part of a written script? Or is it enough that you endured, and that endurance shaped you? Simulation or not, the meaning is yours. The feelings are yours. The story is yours. Let's leave this chapter with one more gentle question, one to carry with you like a pebble in your pocket. If tomorrow you discovered, beyond doubt, that the universe was a simulation, what would you do differently? Would you search for the exit? Would you try to speak to the creators? Or would you keep living as you are now, sipping tea, listening to the rustle of leaves, watching the light fall across your room? Maybe the truest answer is the simplest. You would keep being human. Because whether built of atoms or algorithms, the experience of living is what you have, and it is precious. So tonight, as you drift into thought or into sleep, let memory itself guide you. Let your favorite moments replay softly, like a lullaby written in code or carved in time. Let them remind you that meaning is not diminished by mystery. And perhaps, as you rest, you'll find yourself dreaming new worlds, worlds inside worlds, simulations within simulations. Each one as real as the last. What if time itself is only an illusion, an elegant program that gives order to our days, but hides the truth that everything may already exist at once? When you look at a clock, the hands move steadily forward. The past seems behind you, the future ahead. But what if time does not flow like a river at all? What if it is more like a book, with every page already written, waiting for you to turn to the next? And if time is a book, then are you truly moving through it, or simply reading what was always there? Physicists sometimes say that time might not be fundamental, that it could be a construct, a convenient feature of the universe rather than its essence. Like the interface of a game. You see menus and progress bars, but behind them are hidden processes that you never touch. Could time be the universe's way of organizing the story for us, one frame at a time so we don't see the whole plot at once? Think about a film reel. Each frame is fixed, unchanging. But when played in sequence, the illusion of motion arises. You laugh, you cry, you feel suspense, all because your eyes and mind string together the images. What if our lives are no different, each moment a frame, and what we call living is simply the playback of the reel? Would you want to peek at the end of the film? Or would that spoil the beauty of each unfolding scene? Consider how memory anchors you to the past, while imagination tethers you to the future. Together, they create the sense of moving through time. But memory is unreliable, and imagination is uncertain. So what if both are tricks of the simulation? Mechanisms to keep you engaged in the story, convinced of progress. Imagine, instead, that the past still exists, every detail preserved like files in a cosmic archive. And the future too, already waiting, though hidden from your eyes. You are not traveling, but simply shifting perspective across a fixed landscape. Doesn't that sound eerily like how a programmer might design reality? And then, there's the strangeness of relativity. Einstein showed us that time does not flow the same for everyone. For someone moving close to the speed of light, time slows down. For someone deep in gravity's pull, it stretches differently. Two people can experience two different nows. What kind of reality behaves like that? A natural one, or one where time is just another variable, adjustable like a setting in a simulation? If time can be bent, if it can be slowed or quickened, does that mean it is not as absolute as we think? Could it be that time is not the stage but only part of the script? Sometimes I like to picture time as a great tapestry. Each thread is a moment woven alongside others. From up close, you see only the strand before you, the moment you're living. But step back, and the whole design appears. Past, present, future, all at once. If the simulation is real, perhaps its creators see the tapestry in full, while we see only one stitch at a time. Would that change how you live? Knowing that from some higher vantage your life already exists in entirety? Think about dreams again. How often do you wake and realize that time behaved strangely? Hours pass in minutes or minutes stretch into days. A dream can feel endless, though you've slept for only a few moments. Isn't it curious how flexible time becomes in those inner worlds? And if the brain alone can distort time so easily, what does that say about time in the larger world? Could it be just as malleable, just as constructed? Maybe we live inside a dream of time, a dream so consistent we mistake it for truth. And yet, time is also deeply personal. You've felt how it changes with mood. A joyful afternoon slips away like quicksilver. A lonely night crawls, each minute heavy. Time bends not only in physics, but in your own perception. Why should something as fundamental as time feel so different depending on your state of mind? Unless, of course, it is not fundamental at all. Perhaps it is a feature of consciousness, woven into us to make experience meaningful. Could time exist only because we perceive it? Here's a playful thought experiment. Imagine you could press pause on the universe. Every star, every planet, every person would freeze in place. Would anyone inside notice? Or would the simulation simply wait until you pressed play again? And if someone pressed pause on our world right now, would you be aware of the stillness? Or would you blink and find yourself carrying on? unaware that you had been frozen for an eternity? Doesn't that possibility make you shiver just a little? There's another way to think of time as currency. Every second is a coin you spend, and you cannot earn it back. But what if, in a simulation, time could be rewound? What if the program could restore a saved file, restart the game, reset the timeline? Would you want that? To live a day again, perfecting each choice? Or would repetition strip life of its flavor, leaving only endless rehearsals with no performance? Perhaps the beauty of time is precisely its one-way flow, the bittersweet knowledge that moments cannot return. Even if it is an illusion that gives meaning. Philosophers often ask, if everything is predetermined, do we truly have free will? If the simulation is already written like a novel, then are your choices real, or are they scripted lines you were always meant to speak? It is a troubling thought, but maybe it misses something, because even a scripted line can be delivered with sincerity. Even a character in a novel can feel authentic emotions. If the story is well written, the life inside it is still vivid, still meaningful. So whether time is free or fixed, whether choices are open or written, does the experience not remain real to you? Let's return to physics for a moment. Some scientists are hunting for signs that time may not be continuous, but granular, like the frames of a film. Perhaps the smallest tick of time is indivisible, a quantum of duration. If so, then reality is not smooth, but stitched together in invisible beats. Like music, played note by note, creating the illusion of flow. Isn't that beautiful? To think of time itself as a rhythm, a cosmic heartbeat guiding us forward? And if that's true, who or what is the drummer? Sometimes I imagine time as a story being told to us by the universe. Each moment is a word, each year a sentence, each lifetime a chapter. The story seems to move forward, but in truth, the book is already complete. We are simply reading through it, breath by breath. Would you want to flip ahead to see the ending of your own story? Or is the mystery what makes it worth turning each page? Think of the stars. Their light takes thousands, even millions of years to reach us. When you gaze at them, you are not seeing the present, but the past. Time, stretched across distance, reveals itself as layered. You are always living in delay, watching echoes of history. Doesn't that mean the night sky is a window into the archive of the universe? A reminder that past and present mingle constantly, that time is not a line but a web? And then there's the question no one can quite answer. What was before the beginning? If the universe had a start, what came before it? Can there even be a before outside of time? Or is that like asking what lies north of the North Pole? A question that dissolves itself. If time is part of the simulation, then perhaps the beginning is simply the moment the program was launched, the start of the run. Before that, there was no time at all, only silence. Does that idea comfort you, or leave you restless? I find myself circling back to wonder, whether time is real or simulated, whether it flows like a river or ticks like a clock, it gives us the shape of our lives. It lets us treasure mornings, savor meals, linger in embraces. It makes partings poignant and reunions sweet. It teaches us that moments matter because they pass. Maybe time is not the problem to be solved, but the gift to be cherished. So here is the question I'll leave with you tonight. If time is only an illusion, how will you live inside it? Will you race against it, fearing its end? Or will you walk with it gently, knowing that each tick of the clock, real or not, is an invitation to be present, alive, awake to the wonder of being? Because whether time is code or cosmos, it still gives you this moment. And this moment is yours. What if the smallest building blocks of reality are not things at all but instructions? Not matter, not particles, not even energy, just rules, lines of code, patterns that tell the universe how to behave. When you break a stone into pieces, the pieces remain solid. Break them further into dust, into molecules, into atoms. And still, there is something there. But dive even deeper into the heart of the atom, and what do you find? Not miniature marbles, not little nuggets of matter, but probabilities. Clouds of chance. Equations written into the very fabric of being. Is that not curious? That the foundation of everything is not substance, But mathematics? Some physicists have said, half in jest, half in awe, that the universe looks suspiciously like a simulation because it runs on math. Why should reality follow equations so consistently? Why should numbers describe the spin of particles, the orbit of planets, the expansion of space itself? It is as though the universe is fluent in a single language, mathematics. Not just fluent, dependent. Take away the math and the world dissolves. But what if math is not just a tool to describe reality? What if math is reality? What if the code behind everything is numerical, the way computer code underlies every image on your screen? Think of digital worlds again. On the surface, you see mountains, rivers, trees. But behind the scenes, they are numbers, coordinates, textures, algorithms generating the illusion of solidity. Now compare that to our world. You see mountains, rivers, trees. Yet all of them reduced to atoms, atoms to particles, particles to probabilities governed by equations. Could it be that nature, too, is only the rendered surface of hidden instructions? When you walk through a forest, are you walking through leaves and bark, or through code rendered as green and brown? Even the word particle misleads us. Quantum physics shows us that particles can behave as waves, spread out across space, exist in more than one state at once. They are not fixed objects but possibilities. Only when measured do they collapse into form. Doesn't that sound eerily like how a simulation would work? Rendering details only when someone looks closely, keeping everything else in the background as probabilities until observation demands precision. Like the pixels that sharpen only when you press your face close to the screen. And then there's the strange idea of information. Some scientists suggest that information, not matter, not energy, is the true foundation of the universe. That every particle, every force, every event is a manifestation of bits of data. Think of it as binary code, ones and zeros on and off. But here, the code is woven into spacetime itself. A cosmic database, writing and rewriting itself at every instant. If that's true, then what we call reality may simply be information processing. A grand computation unfolding like a program running across an unfathomable processor. Let's pause and imagine for a moment. What would that processor look like? Would it be a machine glowing and humming in some higher dimension? Would it be organic, pulsing like a mind? Or would it be something we cannot picture at all? An order of reality so far beyond ours that words fail? And if such a processor exists, does it belong to a creator? Or is it simply nature on another level, an endless recursion of simulations creating simulations? Could our world be a dream inside a dream? A program nested within programs? Now think of glitches. Every system has them. No program runs forever without error. Could the anomalies of physics, the strange, rare events we struggle to explain, be glitches in the code? Dark matter, for instance. Scientists believe it makes up most of the universe. Yet we cannot see it, cannot touch it. It exerts gravity, but refuses to reveal itself. What if it is not matter at all, but a placeholder in the simulation? A patch to keep the equations balanced, even if the details are hidden. Or what about quantum entanglement, the eerie phenomenon where particles separated by vast distances seem to communicate instantly? Some call it spooky action at a distance. But perhaps it is only efficient coding. Instead of calculating separately, the program links them with one instruction. Isn't that exactly what a programmer would do? Here's a gentler question. If reality is code, what does that make you? When you think, when you feel, when you dream, are those not also instructions being carried out? A cascade of algorithms generating the illusion of self? It sounds bleak, perhaps, to reduce love to code or hope to equations. But think carefully. If the code produces love that feels real, is it any less love? If the instructions give rise to dreams that move your heart, are they any less beautiful? Maybe code is not cold. Maybe code is the language of wonder itself. Consider music. At one level, it is vibrations of air, measured in frequencies. At another, it is waves transformed into notes, chords, melodies. At yet another, it is emotion, nostalgia, joy, sorrow. So too with reality. At its deepest, perhaps it is code. But from that code blooms forests, laughter, friendship, the taste of bread, the silence of stars. Would you trade the beauty of the experience just because you discovered the pattern beneath it? Or does knowing the pattern make the beauty all the more astonishing? There is also the question of scale. A simulation must run on finite resources, so perhaps not every detail of the universe is fully calculated at once. Maybe only what we observe is rendered with precision, while the rest stays fuzzy, potential, waiting. This could explain why quantum mechanics feels incomplete, why particles exist as probabilities until measured. Maybe the universe is simply conserving its resources, rendering details only when necessary. Look at the sky tonight. Thousands of stars, millions more unseen. Do you believe each one is calculated in detail every moment? Or do you suspect they exist in potential until your eyes or a telescope demand their presence? And what of consciousness? This strange awareness you carry, the feeling of being you. Could that too be code? Some thinkers suggest consciousness is an emergent property, like a flame that rises when fuel, heat, and oxygen meet. Others suggest it may be fundamental, a built-in feature of reality itself. But if we are in a simulation, perhaps consciousness is both the point and the method. Perhaps the program was built not just to generate stars and atoms, but to generate awareness, to give rise to beings who can ask, who can wonder, who can marvel at their own existence. And isn't that what you are doing right now? Asking, wondering, marveling? There's an old thought experiment. What if an artificial intelligence inside a computer became self-aware? Would it know it was made of code? Or would it, like us, take its world at face value, never suspecting the circuits beneath? And if it did suspect, if it whispered to itself, "Am I real?" would that not mirror our own suspicions about the universe? Could it be that self-awareness is the simulation looking back at itself? Imagine now that the simulation is layered. Perhaps we are not the first. Perhaps those who created our world are themselves inside another, and those above them inside another still. An infinite tower of realities, each simulating the next. If that is true, then what we call ultimate reality may not exist at all. Only layers upon layers, dreams within dreams. And if so, is that frightening or liberating? Because if reality is infinite in this way, then meaning does not depend on what is base and what is simulation. Meaning depends only on the experience itself. An experience here and now is undeniably real to you. Let's circle back gently to the question, what if the smallest building blocks are instructions, not things? If everything is code, then every flower, every breath, every smile is a line in the greatest program ever written. Wouldn't that make the universe a work of art? Not just a machine, but a symphony of instructions, weaving reality into patterns too vast for us to see in full? Perhaps the point is not to escape the simulation, but to marvel at it, to see its beauty, to live within it fully, to let its patterns carry you into wonder. So tonight, as you drift into stillness, let the thought rest softly in your mind. What if the universe is made not of matter, but of meaning written in code? What if you, too, are part of that code, a unique pattern in the great design? Let it comfort you, not unsettle you. Because whether you are made of atoms or algorithms, the warmth you feel, the memories you carry, the love you give, these are real. They are the poetry of the code, and they are yours. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest secret of all is that the code itself is dreaming through you. What if space itself is not empty at all, but a kind of hidden fabric stretched tight, humming with invisible threads? And what if those threads are not material but the scaffolding of the simulation, like the grid beneath a digital world, the lattice on which everything else is drawn? When you look up at the night sky, it feels infinite. Stars scattered across blackness, planets orbiting in silence, galaxies whirling like pinwheels of light. Yet the space between them, what is it really? Is it nothing? A void? A great emptiness? Or is it something more mysterious, something structured, something essential to the very possibility of existence? Some scientists suggest that space is quantized, made up of tiny discrete chunks, the way a digital image is made up of pixels. Zoom in close enough, and you might find that the smoothness of space breaks apart into indivisible units. The pixels of the universe. Isn't that exactly how a simulation would be built? No infinite smoothness, just finite resolution, the smallest possible building blocks, like the smallest squares of a screen. But if that is true, then every movement, every gesture you make, is not continuous but stitched together, frame by frame. You are not gliding, but stepping across invisible tiles. Does that change how you feel about walking through the world? Now imagine that space is like a woven cloth. Each thread is an invisible line of connection, and the intersections are where particles, stars, and galaxies appear. If you pull the fabric, it stretches. If you push it, it curves. Gravity, then, could simply be the bending of this fabric. Einstein suggested something like this, that mass bends spacetime, and objects move along the curves. But what if that fabric is not physical at all? What if it is the rendering grid of the simulation, the underlying geometry on which reality is projected? When light bends around a star, is it following nature's rules, or is it following the framework of the code? Here's another mystery. The universe is expanding. Galaxies are rushing away from one another, as if space itself is stretching. And the expansion is accelerating, driven by something we call dark energy. But no one knows what dark energy is. Could it be nothing more than a function in the code? A background instruction that tells the grid to expand, to create more room for the simulation to play out? If that is the case, then the night sky is not just beautiful. It is the unfolding of an algorithm, the continuous creation of new pixels of reality. Let's think about boundaries. Every simulation has limits. A game map may seem vast, but eventually you reach the edge. An invisible wall, a place where the designers decided the world should stop. Does our universe have such edges? We cannot see beyond the observable universe, the bubble of light that has had time to reach us since the Big Bang. But is there more beyond? Or does the simulation simply end at the horizon, continuing only if we move closer, rendering new space as needed? Would you want to find the wall of the universe, the place where reality simply stops? Quantum field theory tells us that even in the emptiest vacuum, space is not truly empty. It seethes with fluctuations, particles blinking in and out of being. A restless ocean of possibility. Why should nothing behave like something? Unless nothing is not truly nothing, but the substrate of the simulation. A background hum, like static on a screen, the default state when no specific instructions are given. Could it be that what we call empty space is just unused capacity, waiting for the code to write new events, new matter, new experiences? Now let's stretch the question further. What if the stars you see are not really there at all but projections, rendered only when observed? It sounds fanciful, but consider this. When you look at the Milky Way, you are seeing light that has traveled thousands of years. Some of those stars may no longer exist. You are seeing a rendering of the past, a playback of ancient frames. And if no one looked, would the stars need to exist at all? Or would the simulation simply skip them, saving its processing power for what matters, the moments that are witnessed? Does that make you wonder whether reality is built for the observer as much as for itself? Think also of symmetry. Physicists are fascinated by it. The laws of physics seem the same everywhere, on Earth, in distant galaxies, in the smallest atom. The grid of space is uniform, consistent, predictable. Why should it be so? Why not chaos, variation, unevenness? Unless it was programmed that way, like a game where the rules apply equally to every corner of the map. Consistency is efficient. It allows complexity to grow without collapsing. Perhaps that is why the simulation is so orderly, why the laws never falter. But do you ever sense that beneath that order, there might be hidden asymmetries, small cracks in the perfect grid? Consider light. It always travels at the same speed, no matter who measures it, no matter how fast they move. Why should that be? Why does the universe enforce such a rule with absolute precision? Could it be that the speed of light is simply a cap coded into the simulation, the maximum update rate of reality? Like the refresh rate of a screen, the limit beyond which the system cannot render. And if so, Does that mean the fabric of space is less a void and more a processor speed, a timing mechanism that keeps the universe consistent? Here's another angle. Space feels three-dimensional to us. Down, left, right, forward, back. But is that truly all? Some theories suggest additional dimensions, curled so small we cannot see them. Hidden layers in the fabric like code folded behind the interface. Could those unseen dimensions be the scaffolding of the simulation, the backstage corridors we are never meant to enter? And if you could step sideways into those hidden layers, what would you find? Another world? Or the machinery of the code itself? When you sit quietly, perhaps at night, and feel the stillness of the room, you might think space is just emptiness surrounding you. But is it? Or is it the most mysterious presence of all, the silent grid that makes everything possible? Without space, there is nowhere to move, nowhere to exist, nowhere to be. Without space, there is not even time. Space is the canvas, the stage, the womb of reality. If the simulation is real, then space is its greatest illusion. The invisible architecture, convincing you that it is vast and endless, when it may be nothing more than a clever trick of perspective. And yet, space also gives us wonder. It gives us the night sky, the sweep of galaxies, the thrill of possibility. It gives us distance so that longing can exist. It gives us perspective so that we may look up and feel both small and infinite. Perhaps that is the greatest artistry of all, that even if space is code, it still inspires awe. Even if it is scaffolding, it still feels like a cathedral. So let me leave you with this question. When you gaze into the stars, what do you really see? A void filled with burning suns? Or the shimmering display of a cosmic simulation, written line by line across a hidden grid? And more than that, does it matter? If the beauty moves you, if the silence humbles you, if the vastness stirs your imagination, then isn't that reality enough? Perhaps space is not empty, not full, not even physical. Perhaps it is simply the dream of a greater mind, and we are the figures dancing within it. And tonight, as you rest, you might imagine yourself floating in that dream, weightless, timeless, held gently in the infinite fabric of possibility. What if life itself is not an accident, but a program carefully seeded into the code of the universe? What if every cell, every spark of thought, every heartbeat is not only biology but computation, algorithms wearing the mask of flesh? When you look in the mirror, you see skin, hair, eyes that blink. Beneath that, organs and blood, nerves carrying signals. But deeper still, down to the tiniest scales, your body is a network of information. DNA, for instance, is a code written in 4 letters, A, T, C, and G. For symbols that together script the instructions for everything you are. Doesn't that sound suspiciously like programming? For simple units, combined into countless possibilities, shaping forms, thoughts, and destinies. Biologists call DNA the language of life. But what if it is literally a language, one written by the creators of the simulation? Instead of lines of computer code, it is lines of genetic code, generating the illusion of organic growth. Think about it. When a program runs, it doesn't just appear instantly. It unfolds, step by step, according to instructions. So too with you. From a single fertilized cell, the code unravels, dividing, differentiating, building bones, shaping lungs, sparking neurons. Isn't it uncanny how alike those processes feel? A computer rendering pixels on a screen, and a body rendering itself in the womb. But the mystery doesn't end at DNA. Consider consciousness, this strange, luminous quality that makes you, you. Science can trace neural signals, measure brainwaves, even map areas of thought and memory. But no one can explain why the firing of neurons gives rise to the experience of being. Why should patterns of activity feel like awareness? Why should matter suddenly light up from the inside? Unless, of course, consciousness is not an accident of matter, but the very point of the simulation. Perhaps awareness is what the code was designed to create, the spark the programmers wanted to see. Could it be that you, sitting here wondering about your own reality, are the reason the simulation exists at all? Think of artificial intelligence in our own world. Machines that learn, adapt, even create. Once, they followed only strict instructions. Now, they can write poetry, compose music, generate images that surprise even their makers. If we can create such intelligence within a few decades of computing, then what could a civilization millions of years more advanced accomplish? Could they not create minds like ours, minds that believe themselves independent, free, alive? And if we can create simulations containing thinking beings, does that not make it more plausible that we ourselves are inside one? There's a thought experiment called the ancestor simulation. It suggests that if advanced civilizations exist, they may create countless simulations of their past to study their origins. If that is true, then statistically we are more likely to be inside a simulation than outside one, because there would be far more simulated worlds than base realities. Could it be, then, that we are reenacting history on a cosmic stage, playing our roles again and again, while others watch and learn? And if so, would you want to know? Or would you rather live your life as though it were simply your own, without the shadow of an audience? Now let's pause for a gentler reflection. Life, whether simulated or not, is filled with moments of undeniable reality. The taste of fruit in summer, the warmth of a hug, the sting of grief when someone you love is gone. These are not illusions to you. They are the marrow of your experience. Even if you are code, the joy still feels like joy, the sorrow still like sorrow. And maybe that is all that matters. After all, isn't that the same for characters in a story? They are made of ink, not flesh. Yet when you read their struggles, you feel them deeply. Their lives, though imagined, still move you. So what makes your life any less valuable if it is written in a different kind of script? Consider ecosystems, forests, oceans, deserts. Each one a network of interactions, species depending on one another, energy cycling endlessly. It is as though the code of life was not written for individuals alone, but for whole systems, each part woven into the next. If this is a simulation, it is not a simple one. It is intricate, layered, breathtakingly detailed. A masterpiece of design. Doesn't that suggest not a cold experiment, but a work of art? And then there is evolution, the slow unfolding of complexity, life adapting and changing over eons. At first glance, it seems like randomness sculpted by survival. But think about simulations again. Many evolve over time. Programmers set the initial conditions, then let the system run, watching as patterns emerge. Could evolution itself be such a program? A set of rules that allows life to bloom in endless forms, all while conserving resources and avoiding rigid design? Maybe the creators didn't write every species into existence. Maybe they simply wrote the rules and let the simulation surprise even them. Isn't that what we do, too, when we create games and simulations in our own world? We set the rules, then delight in the unexpected outcomes. Another question: what if death itself is part of the program? In one sense, it is biological necessity. Systems renew, resources recycle, populations balance. But in another sense, it may be a way for the simulation to reset memory, to end one script and begin another. Could reincarnation be the reuse of code, the recycling of consciousness into a new form? Could near-death experiences be moments where the veil of the simulation briefly thins, revealing the structure behind it? And if so, what lies beyond death? A return to the base reality? Or another simulation, another layer, another dream within the dream? It's easy to become unsettled by these questions. But pause here and breathe. Remember, whether or not life is simulated, the experiences within it remain real to you. The laughter, the colors, the music, they matter because they are felt. If a simulation can create meaning, then meaning is no less real. Think also of creativity. Why do we tell stories, paint pictures, compose songs? What drives us to make worlds within worlds? Perhaps it is because we are mirrors of our creators. Just as they simulated us, we simulate others. Our art, our fiction, our technology, they are echoes of the grand simulation we may inhabit. Isn't that a humbling thought? That our desire to create is itself evidence of having been created? Some philosophers argue that even if we proved the simulation hypothesis true, nothing would change. The sky would still be blue, water would still quench thirst, love would still warm the heart. Reality, whether simulated or not, is still reality for those who live in it. But others say that knowing would change everything. That if we discovered the code, we might learn to bend it, to hack the simulation, to transcend the rules. Would you want that power? Or would it feel like peeking behind the curtain of a magic show, spoiling the wonder? Imagine for a moment that you could speak to the creators. What would you ask them? Why they made this world? Why they gave you joy and sorrow, beginnings and endings? Would you ask them to explain the rules, or to let you continue without answers? And if they replied, would their words even make sense to you? Or would their minds be so far beyond ours that their reasons would seem like riddles? Perhaps the real question is not whether we live in a simulation, but what we do with the possibility. Does it inspire despair or gratitude? Do you feel trapped or awed by the complexity of the system you inhabit? Because either way, life remains. The morning light, the night sky, the laughter of children, the scent of rain on soil, all of it is yours to experience. And that experience, simulation or not, is astonishing. So tonight, let yourself rest in this thought. Life may be code, but it is also poetry. DNA may be instructions, but it writes love and sorrow as eloquently as any poem. Consciousness may be an emergent algorithm, but it is still the light by which you see the world. What if, instead of searching for proof of the simulation, you simply chose to live as though reality itself were the most beautiful mystery? And perhaps, just perhaps, that is what the creators, if they exist, hoped for. That we would not only question, but also marvel. That we would not only analyze, but also love. For in the end, whether you are code or clay, whether you are dreamed or born, you are here. And here is precious. What if dreams are more than fleeting stories of the night? What if they are the portals through which the simulation whispers to us, testing boundaries, bending the rules, letting us glimpse worlds beyond the waking grid? You close your eyes, and the familiar room dissolves. Walls fall away, time loses its order, and suddenly you are elsewhere. Walking down streets you've never known, speaking to people you've never met, moving through landscapes stitched from fragments of memory and imagination. But who is doing the stitching? Is it only your brain, or could the simulation itself be using dreams as a sandbox, a playground where reality can be rehearsed, experimented with, reshaped before the code runs again in waking life? Consider how strange dreams are. In them you can fly, you can breathe underwater, you can meet someone long gone and speak with them as though no time has passed. The laws of physics, so rigid in daylight, melt away at night. Why should that be? Why would the mind, which evolved to help us survive in reality, spend so many hours creating unreality? Unless the dreams themselves have a purpose, not just for you but for the simulation. Could dreams be the testing grounds where new lines of code are run, scenarios are played out, outcomes are studied? Think about how some dreams feel astonishingly real. You wake with your heart racing, your body sweating, your mind convinced the events truly happened. And yet, they dissolve with the morning light, leaving only wisps behind. Isn't that similar to a saved file being deleted, a simulation run and then discarded? And what of recurring dreams? The same landscape, the same event, repeating over and over. Could those be loops in the code, an experiment being run again and again until the right outcome is found? Cultures throughout history have believed dreams to be more than imagination. Ancient Egyptians thought they were messages from the gods. Native traditions often saw them as visions, guides to truth. Freud called them the royal road to the unconscious, Jung the theater of archetypes. But what if all of them were right in another sense? What if dreams really are messages not from gods or hidden psychology, but from the underlying simulation itself? Gentle nudges, strange symbols, testing whether you might notice the seams of reality. Have you ever woken from a dream that felt more important than it should, as if it were trying to tell you something? There's also the curious phenomenon of lucid dreaming, when you become aware inside the dream that you are dreaming. Suddenly, the rules bend to your will. You can fly if you wish, shape landscapes with thought, conjure anything you desire. What if lucid dreaming is the closest we come to hacking the simulation? In those moments, you realize the world is malleable, that its laws can be rewritten. Could this be a clue, a training ground where we learn that even waking reality might not be as fixed as it seems? If you can rewrite a dream, could you someday learn to rewrite reality? Scientists studying the brain describe dreams as the byproduct of neurons firing randomly, the mind trying to make sense of noise. But does randomness explain the coherence of some dreams? The way they weave intricate stories, connect emotions, even solve problems? Many inventors and artists credit dreams with breakthroughs. Paul McCartney claimed the melody of yesterday came to him in a dream. Dmitri Mendeleev said the periodic table was revealed to him while asleep. Was that mere chance, or did the simulation offer a gift, slipping solutions through the dream channel? Could dreams be the place where the code speaks most directly, bypassing the rigid logic of waking life? And then there is the unsettling strangeness of shared dreams. Stories exist of people dreaming the same place, the same encounter, the same symbols. Are these coincidences or crossovers in the simulation, moments when two minds wander into the same test field? If dreams are private, how do we explain those overlaps? Unless they are not private at all but nodes on a larger network. Doesn't that possibility stir something deep in you? That in sleep, we may all be connected? Think of the myth of the dreamer. Some traditions say our lives are themselves a dream, and that death is simply waking up. If the universe is a simulation, doesn't that sound eerily accurate? We might all be characters inside someone else's dream, believing ourselves free until the dreamer stirs. And if that is true, then whose dream are we in? A god's? An ancestor's? Or our own, projected outward into a shared simulation of consciousness? Dreams also play with time. A full narrative can unfold in seconds. Years can pass in a night. You can wake from what feels like a lifetime lived, only to find you've been asleep for minutes. Doesn't that echo the relativity of time itself, the way the simulation stretches and compresses duration as if it were elastic? Could dreams be small-scale demonstrations of how malleable time truly is, hints that waking time is no less fluid, only more strictly managed? Nightmares, too, deserve attention. Why do we suffer through terrifying visions in the safety of sleep? Some say they prepare us for danger, rehearsing threats so we might survive them awake. But what if they are stress tests in the simulation, ways of probing our reactions, mapping how fear shapes choice, gathering data on resilience? Could your nightmares be experiments run by the code, not punishments but observations? And if so, doesn't that make survival through them, waking into light, all the more meaningful? There's a comforting thought hidden in this. If dreams are the testing grounds, the rehearsal spaces, then perhaps waking life is the main stage. Which means your existence, right now, has been shaped by endless practice runs, refined and prepared until the moment arrived. Perhaps every struggle you face has already been rehearsed in the dream world. And perhaps every dream you forget is still woven into your being, guiding you silently. Isn't that strangely reassuring, that the simulation may be training you for a life you are already living? Now think of imagination itself. Daydreams, fantasies, visions of what if. Are these not waking dreams? And are they not the engines of creativity, invention, and change? Maybe imagination is the overlap between the simulation's hidden code and our conscious minds. A place where possibilities whisper to us, showing what could be before it becomes what is. Could it be that imagination is not just personal fancy, but access to the simulation's design studio? And yet, for all their strangeness, dreams also ground us. They connect the waking self to something larger, something timeless. They remind us that reality is not as rigid as it appears. Even if they are only fragments of code, even if they are illusions inside an illusion, they still shape you. They still comfort, disturb, inspire, and heal. So perhaps it does not matter whether dreams are random sparks or deliberate scripts. What matters is that they remind us to question, to wonder, to see the thinness of the veil we call reality. Let's linger with one last image. Imagine lying down to sleep tonight. As your body grows heavy, your mind begins to drift. The walls fade, the world dissolves, and a new one arises. In that moment, are you leaving reality or entering another equally real? If the universe is a simulation, perhaps dreams are the bridges, the hidden corridors between levels. Places where we, the characters, get to walk briefly in the backstage, exploring without the burden of waking rules. And when you wake, carrying fragments of those places with you, perhaps you bring back not only memories, but little sparks of truth, that the world is stranger, softer, more malleable than you believe. So as you drift into sleep, let this question guide you. What if tonight's dream is not random at all, but a message from the simulation, written just for you? And whether you remember it in the morning or not, let the possibility soothe you. Because in dreams, as in life, meaning lies not in proof, but in wonder. And wonder is always real. What if the very rules of physics are not laws at all, but settings? Adjustable parameters, chosen and tuned the way you might adjust the brightness of a screen or the difficulty level of a game. Why should gravity have the strength it does? Why should light travel at the speed it does? Why should electrons carry exactly their charge, not more, not less? None of these values seem inevitable. They could have been different, and if they were, the universe itself would look nothing like the one we know. So why these numbers, these constants, so finely balanced? Could it be because they were chosen? Because they were set like dials on the great control panel of a simulation? Physicists sometimes marvel at the fine-tuning problem. Tiny changes in the constants of nature would prevent galaxies from forming, stars from burning, life from arising. Shift the strength of gravity, and everything collapses too quickly, or never binds at all. Alter the electromagnetic force, and atoms become unstable. Adjust the nuclear forces, and stars would never forge the elements of life. And yet here we are, balanced on a razor's edge of possibility. Is that luck? Coincidence? Or is it evidence of calibration? Someone, somewhere, choosing the numbers so that the story of the universe could unfold. Think of a video game. Its physics engine decides how characters move, how objects fall, how worlds hold together. You can make gravity heavier or lighter, friction stronger or weaker. The rules are arbitrary, until chosen. Doesn't the universe feel a little like that? A vast engine running on rules that could have been otherwise but were locked in from the start. And if they are locked, then by whom? Sometimes people explain fine-tuning by invoking the multiverse. If there are infinite universes, each with different constants, then most are barren, but a few, by chance, are just right for life. And naturally, we find ourselves in one of those few because we couldn't exist in the others. But what if the multiverse itself is only another simulation? Another layer of the program, running endless variations to see what emerges. What if our universe is simply one successful run, saved and continued because the conditions worked? Could we be living inside a cosmic experiment, one of countless trials in a laboratory beyond our imagining? Consider also the odd fact that mathematics, abstract and invented in the human mind, fits the universe so perfectly. Equations predict the behavior of particles, the bending of space-time, the expansion of galaxies. Why should a language invented on paper align so exactly with reality? Unless, of course, the universe itself is written in mathematics. Unless math is not our invention, but the very source code of existence. When you solve an equation, are you discovering truth? Or are you glimpsing the hidden code? And what about symmetry? The laws of physics appear the same everywhere, no matter where you go or how you move. Spin an experiment in one direction or another, and the outcomes remain unchanged. Such symmetries are not just elegant, they are fundamental. Why should the universe favor symmetry? Why should it obey rules that are so clean, so consistent? Unless, again, this is the signature of programming. Code loves consistency. Symmetry is efficient, keeps the system running smoothly, but perhaps there are bugs. Small breaks in symmetry, tiny imperfections where the code phrase. Could those be the places where we might glimpse behind the curtain? Here's a thought that always lingers. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does the simulation run at all? Could have remained silent, never booted, never launched. And yet it did. The program runs. The constants are set. The story unfolds. Doesn't that feel like a choice? Let's shift gently to another mystery. Energy. Physics tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. It is conserved, always balanced. Why should that be true? Why should the universe be governed by conservation? unless it is a rule in the code, a way to keep the simulation stable. After all, in programming, conserving resources is crucial. Nothing is wasted, everything is accounted for. Could the law of conservation simply be a reflection of resource management in the simulation? And then, think of randomness. At the quantum level, outcomes are unpredictable. A particle might go this way or that, with no cause. Randomness sprinkled into the code. But why? Why would the universe rely on chance at its foundation? Unless randomness is a shortcut, a way to avoid calculating every detail. In games, randomness creates variety without requiring infinite instructions. Perhaps quantum uncertainty is not mystery, but efficiency. The program leaves some details to chance, confident the big picture will still hold. Do you see how even chaos could be code? Let's imagine for a moment that we could access the cosmic control panel. Sliders for gravity, for light, for charge, for nuclear force. Dials for time, for space, for entropy. If you could adjust them, what would you do? Would you make gravity stronger and risk a collapsing universe? Would you slow the speed of light and change the way energy flows? Or would you leave everything as it is, humbled by how perfectly balanced it already seems? And if someone else adjusted those sliders long ago, what were they aiming for? Philosophers ask whether the universe is fine-tuned for life, or whether life simply adapts to the universe. But perhaps both are true. The code was set so that complexity could arise, and complexity inevitably found a way to become aware. That awareness, your awareness, may be the goal. Or it may be an accident, a delightful byproduct. Either way, it is here. You are here. Doesn't that make you wonder whether the simulation is less about stars and galaxies, and more about consciousness? Think of all the constants as keys on a piano. Each one must be tuned just right to create harmony. If even one string is off, the music collapses. Yet somehow, our universe plays a melody so precise that it allows not only existence, but beauty, love, and thought. Who tuned the piano? Or is the piano itself the program, always self-tuning, always playing the same song? It's tempting to ask for proof, for evidence that the rules are artificial. But maybe the evidence is in the very fact that there are rules at all. Why should reality obey laws? Why should there be consistency, predictability, structure? Chaos might seem more natural, yet what we have is order. Order that can be written in equations. Order that repeats across space and time. Order that feels suspiciously like code. And yet, even if it is code, what then? Does it make the stars less dazzling? Does it make love less profound? If anything, it may add to the wonder that hidden beneath every kiss, every sunrise, every falling leaf, there is an intricate system holding it all together. Maybe the truest beauty lies not in proving the simulation, but in living inside it fully, in marveling at the rules, and at the fact that they allow you to ask these questions at all. So here is the gentle question I leave you with. If you knew the universe was adjustable, that its rules were settings in a simulation, what would you ask to change? Would you erase suffering? Would you add more beauty? Or would you keep it exactly as it is, flaws and all, because those flaws are part of the harmony? And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act is not to change the code, but to play within it, to find meaning in the story it writes through you. For in the end, whether by chance or design, you are here, living in a world where the rules allow for sunsets, music, laughter, and love. And that, simulation or not, is extraordinary. What if numbers themselves are the hidden skeleton of reality, the bones of the simulation on which everything else is draped? What if behind the colors and shapes, behind the touch of a hand or the curve of a planet, there is only mathematics, pure, silent, eternal? Why should the universe be describable by equations at all? Why does the orbit of planets follow precise ratios? Why do waves ripple according to functions? Why does light bend along calculable curves? If the world were random, messy, chaotic, we would not expect such order. And yet, everywhere we look, numbers whisper beneath the surface. Isn't that exactly what we would expect from a simulation, an invisible code running beneath the graphics? Consider geometry. Ancient philosophers noticed that nature seems to love shapes. Snowflakes form with perfect symmetry. Shells curl in spirals that follow the golden ratio. Galaxies, too, spin in arms that mirror the same spiral seen in seashells. Why should the same patterns repeat at every scale, from the smallest seed to the largest star system? Unless they are fractals written into the rules of the program. A simple algorithm, repeated infinitely, generating beauty everywhere. Could it be that when you marvel at a sunflower or a spiral galaxy, you are marveling at the same line of code playing out in different forms? Numbers appear not only in shapes, but in rhythms. Your heart beats in pulses. Music follows measures. The tides of the ocean rise and fall with the moon, which itself cycles endlessly. Seasons return in patterns, planets trace orbits like clockwork. Is the world not a great metronome, ticking steadily according to unseen mathematics? And if so, does that not feel like the timing of a program, the heartbeat of a simulation running smoothly in the background? What if even your own breath, rising and falling as you listen now, is part of that rhythm, syncing you to the code of the cosmos? Physicists sometimes say that mathematics is unreasonably effective in describing reality. Equations not only explain what we see, but predict things we had never observed: particles, forces, behaviors. Discover the math and you discover the future. But why should this be so? Why should symbols on paper align so perfectly with the hidden workings of reality? Unless reality itself is mathematical, unless math is not a description but the very substance of being. Could it be that we live not in a physical universe at all, but in a mathematical one? Think of a simulation again. The world on the screen is convincing: mountains, rivers, skies. But beneath all is numbers, coordinates, vectors, algorithms. The player never sees them, but they are the true reality of that world. Isn't it possible that our universe is the same? That atoms, stars, even thoughts are only the surface, and beneath them all lies an ocean of equations? And if that is true, then when you solve a math problem, are you not, in a small way, peeking into the skeleton of reality itself? There is also mystery in the fact that mathematics feels discovered, not invented. When you find a new equation, it feels as though it always existed, waiting to be uncovered. The Pythagorean theorem, for instance, was true long before Pythagoras wrote it down. Pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, would exist even if no one ever measured it. Where do these truths reside? If the universe is a simulation, then perhaps they are the fundamental code, the eternal structures the program cannot alter, only express. Is it possible that mathematics is the only thing truly real, and everything else is its shadow? Think, too, of prime numbers. Simple, indivisible, and scattered unpredictably along the number line. They seem random, yet they form the backbone of modern computing, encryption, communication. Could primes be the fingerprints of the code, numbers too fundamental to be erased? And if primes are scattered endlessly, does that mean the code itself is infinite, an inexhaustible sequence from which all reality is drawn? Some scientists have even suggested that the universe might be a kind of cellular automaton, a vast grid where each cell follows simple rules, and from those rules emerge infinite complexity. Like Conway's Game of Life, where dots on a grid live, die, and evolve into startling patterns. What if our universe is just a grander version of that? Simple mathematical rules, repeated endlessly, generating galaxies, minds, and histories? Could your very thoughts right now be nothing more than the emergent complexity of such simple rules? This brings us to a deeper question. If reality is math, then what are we? Equations written into flesh? Algorithms experiencing themselves? Does that make us less? Or does it make us part of something eternal, something that can never be erased? Because numbers cannot die. They cannot vanish. The truths of mathematics exist outside of time. Could it be that, in some way, you too are eternal, not your body, not your story, but the mathematical pattern that makes you who you are? There's a paradox here. If the universe is math, why does it feel so alive, so full of color and warmth? Why does a sunset move us, if beneath it is only equations? Why does love stir the heart, if at its core it is only patterns? But perhaps that is the beauty of it. Just as music is mathematics made audible, life is mathematics made tangible. Equations bloom into roses, laughter, tears, dreams. The code is not cold. The code is poetry. And what if poetry and code are not opposites, but the same? Both are languages. Both create meaning. Both transform symbols into experience. Isn't it possible that the simulation was not made to be solved, but to be lived? There is an old philosophical idea that God is a mathematician, that creation itself is geometry written into existence. The ancients saw numbers as sacred, the golden ratio as divine, circles as symbols of perfection. Modern science, though less mystical, has come to much the same conclusion. Numbers are everywhere, and without them, nothing would hold together. So perhaps the ancients were not wrong. Perhaps they intuited what we now suspect, that reality itself is number, that the cosmos is not just described by math but made of it. Think of the stars. Their lifetimes can be measured in equations, their births and deaths predicted with precision. Yet when you look at them, you do not see equations. You see beauty. You feel wonder. Could that be the point of the simulation, to hide the numbers beneath, to let us experience the music rather than the sheet music, the painting rather than the geometry? Maybe the code is the foundation, but the experience is the purpose. And yet, there are mysteries mathematics has not solved. Consciousness, beauty, meaning. Even if all is math, why should math give rise to experience? Why should equations feel like anything at all? Unless experience itself is the final equation, the one the simulation is built to generate. Could it be that the ultimate constant is not gravity or light, but awareness? Here's a gentle thought to rest with. When you count, when you measure, when you balance, you are not just doing arithmetic. You are touching the fabric of reality. You are moving your fingers along the bones of the cosmos. And when you laugh, when you love, when you dream, you are the equations themselves, alive, singing more than numbers, yet never apart from them. So I leave you with this question. If you could see the code, the pure mathematics behind everything, would you want to? Would you give up the music for the notes, the painting for the formula, the lived experience for the equation? Or would you prefer to marvel at the surface, knowing that beneath every star, every hand you hold, every breath you take, the numbers are quietly holding everything together? For perhaps the truest wonder is not in solving the code, but in knowing that it is there, mysterious, eternal, invisible, and that it has chosen for a time to become you. What if death is not the end, but a transition point in the simulation? What if the moment the heart stills and the breath fades is not erasure, but a kind of logout, an exit from this layer of reality into another? We fear death because it feels like disappearance. But what if disappearance is only from within the game, not from existence itself? When you shut down a program, the data doesn't vanish. It lingers in memory, stored, retrievable. Could life work the same way? Could it be that nothing is truly lost, only transferred? Think of how a game character ends. When their health bar drops to 0, the screen goes dark, but the player remains. The code that defined the character still exists, ready to be loaded again, perhaps in another form, another story. Is death for us much the same? The avatar disappears, but the pattern, the consciousness, the data remains, waiting for its next run. If that were true, would death feel less frightening to you? Consider near-death experiences. People across cultures report similar visions. Tunnels of light, reunions with loved ones, feelings of peace. Skeptics call them hallucinations, the brain shutting down. But why should brains shut down in the same way everywhere, producing the same symbols? Unless, perhaps, the simulation has a built-in transition script. A soft closing of the program, a gentle fade-out designed to ease the passage from one state to another. Could it be that the light at the end of the tunnel is not fantasy but code? Religions through history have promised continuation. Heaven, reincarnation, ancestral realms, cycles of rebirth. What if these are not mere hopes, but glimpses of the truth? Not literal in detail, perhaps, but correct in spirit. That death is not the end of consciousness. If the simulation is real, why would it not recycle code? Why waste the intricate pattern of a mind when it could be preserved, transferred, reborn? Might our myths of afterlife be intuitions of how the program truly works? Now think of memory again. When someone dies, their memories vanish from this world, but are they erased entirely? Or are they stored like files archived beyond our access? Could déjà vu, sudden intuition, or inexplicable familiarity be fragments of old code surfacing in a new run? A faint echo from a previous existence, carried forward into this one? Doesn't that make you wonder whether your life is not your first, nor your last, but one of many written on the same template of consciousness? Even in nature, cycles dominate. Seasons die and return. Leaves fall only to grow again. Stars collapse only to seed new stars. Nothing ends, it only transforms. Why should life be any different? Why should we alone be exempt from the universal rhythm of recycling and renewal? Unless our deaths, too, are transformations, part of the great conservation of existence. If energy cannot be destroyed, why should consciousness be the one exception? There is also the haunting idea of legacy. When someone dies, their words, their art, their influence remain. In one sense, this is memory in others. But in another sense, it may be the simulation redistributing their code, leaving traces, fragments, ripples. Could your influence on others be the way the simulation ensures you persist? Not in a single vessel, but spread out, woven into the lives of those you touched. And if so, does it mean that even now, you are living with pieces of countless others inside you? Philosophers have long asked whether death is bad because it is an end, or whether it is neutral, like the time before you were born. But if the simulation is true, then perhaps there was no before. Perhaps you have always existed, in some form, as a pattern waiting to be run. If you existed before, and will exist again, then what is there to fear in this brief pause? Let's turn to a gentler metaphor. Imagine reading a novel. The characters live, struggle, love, and die. When you reach the final page, their story is complete. Yet the book itself still exists. You can pick it up again, read it anew, or place it on a shelf forever. What if death is like that? A closing of one chapter, but not of the book itself. The story ends, but the story's code remains. Would you live differently if you knew your chapter was only one among many? Dreams of immortality tempt us, yet they may not be necessary. Immortality might already be woven into the fabric of the simulation. Not the immortality of a single unbroken life, but of endless returns, endless retellings, endless transformations. Perhaps death is not a bug, but a feature, a way to refresh the system, to allow new stories, new experiences, new growth. Without it, the simulation would stagnate, forever repeating the same states. Could it be that death is the mechanism that makes life meaningful? And then there are ghosts, those persistent tales of lingering presences. Science explains them as imagination, misperception, fear. But what if they are memory leaks, fragments of code still running after the main program has ended? Echoes that remind us the pattern does not vanish all at once. When you feel the presence of someone gone, when you dream of them vividly, could it be that the simulation has left a trace of their data still active, still near? Doesn't that offer comfort, even if it is only code? Some thinkers suggest that if we are in a simulation, there may be ways to escape, to reach the base reality. But what if death is the only exit? Not an end, but the doorway out of this level into another? Would you still fear it? Or would you approach it with curiosity, as the great unveiling? There is also the possibility that death is not universal. What if some patterns are preserved indefinitely, chosen to run without end, while others are recycled? Could what we call saints, geniuses, or visionaries be fragments of code saved, updated, run again with special purpose? What if memory itself is selective immortality, granted not by gods but by the program? But whether or not this is true, here is what remains undeniable. Life feels real. Joy, sorrow, wonder, all of it matters, even if it is temporary. And maybe it matters precisely because it is temporary. Would you savor the sweetness of a fruit if you thought it would last forever? Or is it the fleetingness of the bite, the knowledge it will be gone, that makes it so intense? Perhaps death is not a flaw in the code, but the reason beauty exists at all. Imagine, then, your own death, not as darkness or void, but as transition, like falling asleep and waking in another room, like closing one story and opening another, like shutting down a program and starting it anew. Could it be gentler than we fear, more graceful, more continuous? And if so, would it change how you live now? Would you live more boldly, knowing the end is not the end? Would you live more gently, knowing everyone you meet will someday walk through that same doorway? Perhaps the simulation teaches us, through death, that everything is connected, that nothing vanishes, only shifts form, that love persists in memory, that influence persists in others, that consciousness persists in patterns. So let death not be a terror, but a teacher. Here is the question to rest with. If you knew that death was not an end but a passage, how would you live your remaining days? Would you waste less time on fear? Would you savor more, forgive more, wonder more? Because whether the simulation is real or not, death comes. And when it does, the greatest mystery of all will open before you. And maybe, just maybe, you will discover that the simulation was never about endings but about transformations. And that nothing, truly nothing, is ever lost. What if the very act of questioning is itself the purpose of the simulation? What if the reason you wonder, doubt, and search is not to reach a final answer, but to live inside the mystery, because the mystery is the point? When you gaze at the stars, you ask, what are they? When you hold a loved one's hand, you ask, why does this matter so much? When you lie awake at night, you ask, what am I? Really? Perhaps the code was written not to trap us, nor to explain itself, but to give us the gift of wondering, to place us in a world just mysterious enough that our minds would never rest, but always reach, always imagine, always dream. Could curiosity be the truest function of the program? Think about how children explore. They pull apart toys, ask endless questions, stare at ants on the ground as if they hold secrets. That wonder seems innate, instinctual. Why would evolution or chance give us such an insatiable hunger to ask why? Unless the simulation depends on it. Unless the program was designed so that curiosity keeps it alive, generating new ideas, new choices, new paths. If we never questioned, the story might stagnate. If we never doubted, the code might grow still. Could it be that our very restlessness is what keeps the simulation unfolding? And yet, answers are always partial. Every discovery opens new questions. Physics uncovers particles, then asks what they are made of. Biology maps DNA, then asks how consciousness arises. Philosophy declares truths, then debates them endlessly. Doesn't it feel as though the simulation was designed to never let us finish the puzzle? Each solved piece reveals another gap. The horizon always recedes. What if that's intentional? What if the universe is not a riddle to be solved, but a labyrinth to be walked, forever opening into new corridors? Would you still seek the answer, knowing you might never arrive? Or would you let yourself marvel at the journey itself? Some say the search for truth is futile, but perhaps futility is the wrong word. Perhaps the search is the truth. The asking is the answer. When you wonder whether you live in a simulation, you are participating in the very function of it. Like a dream that becomes aware of itself, you are both player and questioner, both character and critic. Isn't that extraordinary, that the program can generate beings who doubt the program? Think also of art. We create paintings, music, stories, not to solve problems, but to explore them. A poem does not answer, it invites. A melody does not explain, it moves. What if the simulation is itself a work of art, and we are both subjects and co-creators? What if reality is less a machine and more a canvas, painted with questions, not certainties? Could it be that the truest response to the mystery is not to solve it, but to join in its creation? Adding your own colors, your own notes, your own stories? There is a temptation to demand proof. To say, if this is a simulation, show us the code. Show us the errors, the glitches, the machinery behind the curtain. But even if we found it, what then? Would proof satisfy us? Or would it only raise deeper questions? Who wrote the code? Why? What lies beyond? And if those questions, too, were answered, would we not only find more? Could it be that certainty is not our destination, and that the endless asking is the truest form of life? Philosophers have often said that wisdom begins with wonder, that to know you do not know is the first step. If that is true, then perhaps the most real thing about us is not our bodies, nor even our thoughts, but our questions. When you ask, "Am I real?" you are already proving that something within you transcends simple programming. Code executes, minds inquire. Code obeys, minds doubt. Isn't that doubt itself the spark of awareness, the light that makes you more than lines of instruction? And yet, mystery can feel heavy, can feel like a burden, like a fog that never clears. But maybe it is more like a blanket, soft and protective. The unknown is not here to trap you, but to hold you gently, to give you space to grow without reaching an edge too quickly. Would life lose its flavor if every answer were given at once? Would beauty vanish if it were fully explained? Perhaps mystery is the simulation's way of giving us eternity, not through endless time, but through endless depth. Imagine for a moment that you did find the answer, that you knew beyond doubt whether you were real or simulated. Would it change how you love, how you laugh, how you savor a sunrise? Or would life continue, just as vivid, just as precious, because experience itself is undeniable, no matter its origin? Could it be that the question, "What is real?" matters less than the fact that reality, whatever it is, feels this way to you? Here's another way to see it. Maybe the simulation is not something outside us, imposed upon us, but something we are co-creating. Each choice, each act of kindness or cruelty, each dream is part of the code. We are not trapped inside the program, we are the program writing itself. If that's true, then the question is not who made this, but what am I making here and now? Doesn't that shift the weight from despair to possibility? Think of your own life as a thread in a great tapestry. Alone, the thread seems small, unfinished. But woven together with countless others, it becomes an image too vast to see in full. The pattern only reveals itself from far above. Perhaps the simulation is that tapestry. And the questions you ask, the doubts you hold, are the ways your thread curves and bends, shaping the larger design. Would you really want to see the whole pattern now? Or is it enough to know you are part of something greater, even unseen? It's worth asking, what if there is no simulation? What if reality is simply reality, unmade and unprogrammed? Even then, the questions remain. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does life exist? Why are we conscious? Do you notice how the mystery is inescapable, whether or not the simulation exists? The questions persist, and in their persistence, they remind us that our place is not at the end of knowledge, but always at its edge. Isn't that edge exactly where wonder lives? And maybe that is the final truth. Whether simulated or not, life is meant to be lived with curiosity, with awe, with openness. The program, if it exists, gave us the capacity to marvel. And if it doesn't, the universe itself gave us the same. Either way, we are surrounded by mystery, and mystery is not emptiness. It is fullness we have not yet understood. So let me leave you with one last question, the simplest and perhaps the most profound. What will you do with your mystery? Will you spend it chasing proof? Or will you let it soften you into wonder? Will you guard yourself against it? Or will you let it guide you, as stars guide travelers across the night sky? Because the simulation, if it exists, may never reveal itself fully. But the experience of living, the warmth of light, the taste of water, the sound of laughter, needs no proof to be real to you. And maybe that is enough. Maybe the greatest purpose of all is not to escape the mystery, but to embrace it, to rest in it, to let it carry you like a tide. So tonight, as you breathe and feel the quiet around you, let the questions linger, not as weights, but as companions. Let them remind you that being alive is itself a miracle, whether born of atoms or algorithms. And if the simulation is real, then it has done its work beautifully. For here you are, asking, wondering, marveling, and that is what it means to be alive.